Hello, this is Keith Kardell, and this video is my motorcycle Cannonball entry video for the motorcycle Cannonball in September of 2023, and I'll be riding a 1923 Harley JD, and I hope to meet each and every one of you along the way, and enjoy the video. My first motorcycle was a 1967 Honda CL90, a real pretty candy apple red one. I was 14 years old, did a lot of modifications over the 1 or 2 years that I owned the bike. I bought a manifold, a carburetor manifold from Weber, and put a 32 millimeter Mikuni on it, put a reverse cone megaphone on it. It was amazing how much noise you can get out of a 90cc engine with a megaphone on it. Just ask my mother and all the neighbors. Put a fork brace on it and other things such as that, but quickly moved into big Triumphs. So. As a teenager, riding my Honda 90, I had a friend down the street, same age as me, who had bought a Triumph Daytona 500, and the engine soon went south in it, and he decided to overhaul it in his garage, in his parents' garage, and I took on that project with him. So every night after supper, I would race on down to his house, and then we would work on the bike until the wee hours in the morning. And he had bought a shop manual. And so I'd sit on a bucket and he'd hand me the trouble light, and I'd read the next step in the shop manual and then hand him back the trouble light, and he'd remove the part and so on. Well, anyway, that turned out to be a successful product. The motorcycle ran, and it ran good, and I became interested in Triumph. So I started shopping for a Triumph, and I found a used one for sale, and the person who owned it said that it was seized up. And one of the more smart things I've done in my life, I asked him, I says, can I take the spark plugs out and look in it? And he said, sure. And so took the spark plugs out and stuck a pencil in each hole, and the pistons were at different levels. Well, that's not good. In a Triumph, the pistons go up and down together. So I think I paid $200 for that bike, and took it home and tore it down and put together my parts list. And there was a Triumph shop in Saginaw, Michigan called Sam's Cycle or Sam's Triumph, and I took my parts list there, and I'd written down the serial number and the model number of the bike. I believe the bike was a Bonneville, and got there, and he started picking the parts, and he got to the pistons, and he said to me, do you want the stock pistons or do you want the normal pistons? I go, stock pistons, normal pistons, dang, what's the difference here? And he tried to explain it to me, and then he just said, you know what, I'm just going to sell you the normal pistons. Well, what it was is the bike that I had bought was a Triumph TT, and Triumph TTs were manufactured from 63 to 67, and they were designed for motorcycle flat track racing. So they had a tack on it. They did not have a speedometer. They came without lights. Some previous owner had put lights on the bike and hooked the lights up to the magneto. So as you rev the engine up and down, the lights would get brighter and dimmer. Well, anyway, I got that bike together. Boy, was that a fun bike. Man, that bike had so much power, and rode the bike for about a year, but I had a friend who wanted the bike bad, and he kept making me offers on it, and I sold him the bike, and I went back down to Sam's, and he had a 71 Triumph there that had been front-ended. It was an insurance case, and he sold it to me cheap, and it didn't take much to get it back running. Replace the port tubes, I think, was about it. And I still have that 71 Triumph today out in the garage, and that was the bike that I learned to do wheelies on, and a bunch of other stunts on it. 71 Triumph was not the most ideal year for Triumph. They were competing with Honda at the time, and they put a 3.5 gallon gas tank instead of a 2.5 on the bike to make the bike look bigger, and they had the oil in the frame and that kind of stuff. But anyway, so my most favorite bike, or the bike that I wish I owned today, was that 1967 TT, real pretty one that had the purple paint job, and and the previous owner had put Z bars on it and upsweep Imperial megaphones, and just it had a lot of power. Now my favorite bike today that I do own is my Sportster XL. It's an 86 XL, and it's a great wheelie bike. Is that prior to 86, when Harley came out with the XL, I was riding four-cylinder Japanese bikes. And with the four-cylinder Japanese bikes, to do a wheelie, you have to rev the engine up to get up in the power band, and then as the front end lifts up to the balance point, you have to let off the gas on it. Where with the Harley Sportster's got so much torque to it, is that you just use torque to lift the front end, and you don't have to radically back off on the gas of it. So it's the Sportster to me is the best wheelie bike I've ever owned, and boy do I love doing wheelies. So. As I mentioned earlier, my first bike was a Honda CL90, so naturally as a young teenager, I did a lot of cow trailing and quickly got into Triumphs. Went to school at Michigan Tech up in Houghton and Hancock, Michigan, and that was about 400, 500 miles away from my hometown, and I made several trips back and forth with the 71 Triumph, so that was probably like an 8-hour ride. That was a part of my life that I did the most amount of street riding. When I went to Houston, Texas really worked out well for me. On the southwest side of town was Russell Allen Cycles, and they were a Triumph dealership, and later on they picked up Kawasaki. And then down on the Galveston Freeway was a drag strip halfway between Houston and Galveston. I actually ran into Lonnie Ism Sr. there, who was drag racing Top Fuel bikes there. Became friends with him and went to his shop a couple times in Houston. But Russell Allen helped me put together, build a pair of steel shoes, and the Houston International Raceway, learned to ski on steel shoes, and then in '81, Richard Malpass got his MBA degree from University of Houston, and a little bit shortly after that, this new guy showed up in the scene, Crazy Keith Kardell, riding a brand new Kawasaki, imagine that, and hooked up with drag bike, Tom Laughlin's drag bike. Now that was sometimes called Drag Bike USA, and for a few years it was AMA drag bike. And Tommy would lease a drag strip and then put on a motorcycles only drag race. And during the 80s, went to several of his events, everywhere from Gainesville, Florida, and heck, there was one down by Miami. I think it was called Hollywood Drag Strip, and Spokane, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, and Palmdale. A lot of trips to Firebird Raceway in Phoenix and St. Louis and Darlington, South Carolina, and just all around the country, and had a great time with that. But most of that those trips were a matter of hauling the bike in the back of a trailer, and of course you can't go to that many drag races without doing some drag racing. And in '86 though, a couple of things happened. One was Harley Davidson came out with the new Evo Sportster, and I just had to have one. And then also in '86 is that me and the family moved from Houston, Texas, out to Southern California, and so I went down and introduced myself to Bartell's Harley Davidson. Bartell's was sponsoring Jay Springsteen and Scott Parker, and the '90s was a good time to be working with Harley Davidson and the Bartell's family. The Harleys were really selling well during that time, and I hooked up with NHRA, so I went to 37 NHRA national events during the 90s, everywhere from Montreal, Canada, to Amona, to Seattle, to Gainesville, Florida, just all around the country, and had a lot of fun doing stunt shows for that group. Yeah, but also with the Bartells is that in '92 and '93 made arrangements for them to give me a FXR, and we took it drag racing, and took the 1993 took the Western Division Championship of AHDRA in the street stroker class. Real proud of that. Had a friend, Jack Dolan, and Jack Dolan from San Diego. Probably one of the most interesting stories about Jack Dolan is in the movie Top Gun. The Kawasaki, the GPZ 900R in the movie that was Jack's bike, and he set it up for the movie. And Jack introduced me to land speed racing. I remember going up to El Mirage and watching Jack up there race, and it wasn't long before I was doing that, and working with Bartels, and we put together a Sportster that was lowered and stroked, and worked with that. Went multiple times to El Mirage. I've made 5 trips in my lifetime to Bonneville to race at Bonneville. In 1997, I went to Bonneville, and in the 100 cubic inch class, we set the record at 162.807, and that record stuck for 3 years. And well, records at Bonneville are meant to be broken. So, but I'm proud of that accomplishment. Set a couple other smaller records, or records that didn't last as long, but really enjoy the land speed racing type of events. In the fall of 2016, I was goofing off and watching YouTube videos, and I started seeing these videos on Cannonball, and I thought, wow, that looks like the cat's meow. I got to try that out. So spent 6 months searching for a bike, and finally bought a 1923 Harley JD and began preparing it for the motorcycle Cannonball. The pandemic threw the schedule off a few times, but finally in September 2021, I was an official entry number 30, and it was a learning experience. So I didn't do as well as I had hoped, but I did get in several days of good riding, and as you can see in this video is all from that adventure of the motorcycle Cannonball in September 2021. So looking forward to participating in the September 2023 motorcycle Cannonball, and we'll be taking Temperamental Judy on that adventure. For the September 2023 motorcycle Cannonball, I will be once again riding a 1923 Harley-Davidson JD, affectionately known as Temperamental Judy. Several stories about how she got the name of being Temperamental Judy. This is the same motorcycle that I rode in the 2021 September motorcycle Cannonball. I want to talk a little bit about some of the modifications that I have done to the bike to prep it for motorcycle Cannonball. First on the list is the wheels. Is that in 1923 Harley-Davidsons did not have a front brake, and really wanted a front brake for safety reasons, and the officials for the motorcycle Cannonball allow for modifications that are safety related, so there's no problem there with putting a front brake on. The wheels I replace, in the 20s, Harley-Davidson used clincher tires and clincher wheels. Clincher implies that the tire clinches the rim, which sounds like a good thing. The good news about clincher tires and clincher rims is that if you have a flat tire alongside the road, it's easy to take the tire off the rim and do the repair and put the tire back on the rim. It doesn't take any tools. The bad news is if you're going 50 miles an hour and you lose tire pressure, the tire pretty much immediately loses the rim, so that then at that point you're going 50 miles an hour and you're riding on a steel rim, and then the tire gets bound up in between the rim and the frame. Then you're going 50 miles an hour on a steel rim that's not turning, and that just turns out to be a bad situation. So modern wheels and tires are referred to as deep well tires. It takes tools to put the tire on the rim. However, during a tire pressure loss, the tire stays on the rim, and that's big safety benefits from that design. Let's also wanted to talk a little bit about the electrical system. With motorcycle Cannonball bikes, there's a couple of different approaches you can do with electrical systems. I mean, one of the ones that is not very often done and is difficult to do is to upgrade the 6-volt system to a 12-volt system, which means you have to
Thank you.
rewire the generator. Not many people do that, but a few have. A more common approach is to take it and install a headlamp and a tail lamp that are 12 volt, and then run carry a second 12 volt battery in addition to the 6-volt battery, and use the 12-volt battery as a total loss, where you just charge it up in the evenings and run it down all day long. The third approach, which we took, was to use 6-volt LED bulbs, and it was a scavenger hunt to come up with the 6-volt LED bulbs, but we persevered on it. Now in the front of the bike, I do have the stock Harley Davidson headlamp, because it really adds to the appearance of the bike, and it is a working headlamp. It does have element bulbs in them, but right below it I have a small 5-inch bar lamp that's a 6-volt LED lamp. And where did it come from? Well, it was designed for use on RC cars, is that remote control cars oftentimes use 6-volt batteries, and this light bar that I got, it's bright, it makes a good daytime driving light, and it's been reliable, and I'm very pleased with it. On the back, I'm running circular round red panel lights, and I think the largest I could get was 5/8 of an inch, so I have two of them, one on each side of the license plate. Then for the brake light, well, in 1923, Harley Davidson's only had a running light. They didn't have a brake light, and so the brake light fixture only has is for a single element bulb, and I found an LED bulb that would fit it, and I'm using it for the brake light, and it works well. The carburetor, I'm running with a Linkert carburetor. The original carburetor was a Schubler carburetor. Schubler carburetors are notorious for being cantankerous, and the motorcycle Cannonball deck, they allow for period correct carburetors. Like, you can't run a new McCuney carburetor or anything like that, but it was common back in the day to replace carburetors with Linkert carburetors, because Linkers were very successful coming out of the box when they. Of course, I added a luggage rack and saddle bags. I also put a kill switch on the bike. Now, I thought a kill switch was important, is that with the foot clutch, scenario that you can get into that's not a good scenario is where you start to fall to the left and you put your foot out to catch you, but the clutch is still engaged. And by having a kill switch on the handlebar to kill the engine, that can save the situation from getting worse. Another thing I did too is I installed 2 batteries in the battery box. The electrical system, Harley went through a lot of changes of the electrical systems in the 20s, and what I'm using is a Model D generator and a regulator that came from Rob Nussbaum's Retro Cycles. It's a two brush system, and the regulator is a solid state, which means it's reliable as all heck, and didn't have any problems with it on the first Cannonball. I'm also too is that I'm running 2 different kinds of oils. In the engine, I'm running Valvoline oil, and in the gearbox, I'm running Lucas oil. Now, both oils are 50-weight oil, and typically they would be the same oil, but why am I running Valvoline in the engine and Lucas in the gearbox? Well, it's because when I see a drip of oil on the ground, or dripping off the bottom of the frame, I can take my finger and rub it and look at it, and Lucas oil is blue and Valvoline oil is brown, and so it's color-coded system. I can tell where the oil is coming from. So going into the 2023 motorcycle Cannonball, what are we going to do different? And I say we because I'm talking about my partner Tommy Sloan, who is a retired Top Fuel motorcycle drag racer, and he's been doing the engine work on it. And we discussed it. One of the things that we're going to do different is that we're going to really take a focus on getting new manufactured parts. And preparing for the 2021 Cannonball, I did a lot of late night shopping on eBay, and when you buy a part off of eBay, it turns out to be a 90-year-old part, and it's half worn out, and the 90-year-old parts, the metallurgy wasn't as good then. And when I got on the motorcycle Cannonball and I was talking with the competitors, I say competitors, but it's really a community, and all of the uh, uh, other riders are very helpful and easy to talk to. What I learned is that there's a people out there who are manufacturing parts, and if you check around, you can find them. And so, in terms of the engine critical parts, and so going with Brillo rods, and of course new aluminum pistons, and the valves and the rocker arm and the push rods and the lifters and the cam followers and the cams. I even bought just recently. I bought two brand new cams. I got two cams because one for the engine and then one for the spare engine that we'll be carrying with us. So also on the next Cannonball, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with our use of Loctite. So there are some lessons learned from things falling off during the Cannonball. So my wife wanted me to put a sign on the back of the bike that says "honk" if you see parts falling off. So we're gonna lessons learned are a good thing, and we knew that it was going to be a tough challenge, and we're definitely looking forward to coming back for our second attempt with the 2023 motorcycle Cannonball. So our goals for the September 2023 motorcycle Cannonball are: number one, be safe; number two, have fun; and number three, be a blessing to everyone we meet. It is going to be important to be competitive, and we want to do well, and we want to be proud of our accomplishments, but we can't lose sight of being safe, and we can't lose sight of having fun. It needs to be an enjoyable experience, or it's not worth it. And number three, just being a blessing to everybody we meet, because the motorcycle Cannonball is very much a social event, and it's an event that we're looking forward to and that we love. On my team is going to be Tommy Sloan once again. Tommy Sloan is a retired Top Fuel motorcycle drag racer, and he has a wonderful shop, and he is an excellent engine builder. Boy, does he have stories. I don't want to get off on a sidebar about some of the stuff that Tommy has done, but he does have a reputation for building jugs for Top Fuel motorcycles, and he has really rolled up his sleeves and dug into this motorcycle Cannonball exercise, and has done a great job for me, and is a good friend, and love working with him. Do follow us. Do keep track of what we're up to on either Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. You can search for hashtag Keith Kardell, or you can go to my website, which is www.keithkardell.com. So hope to see you on the road somewhere. Take care, be safe, keep the rubber side down.